Minister, many of us are familiar, and many of us have been members over the years of Scouting Ireland. And there's no doubt the majority of their leaders and volunteers do fantastic work in communities across the country. However, the revelations from last January how one woman's complaint of sexual assault allegations from 2009, when she was 18, has opened a new and insidious and a grotesque litany of sexual abuse over many decades in the Scouting movement, mostly when the children were on trips. And Scouting Ireland's handling of this initial allegation was, in the words of Ian Elliott, who is one of the experts in this area, deeply flawed. The initial allegation has been followed up by a full review of historical cases, and it has been found that there were 71 alleged abusers and 108 victims between the 1960s and 1980s alone, and that there are also incidents from a more recent period. And again, to remember the words of Ian Elliott, not to focus on the numbers, but to focus on the fact that each one of these are people, are families who have been affected. Ian Elliott confirmed all of this and Minister's upon to the Oireachtas Committee yesterday. He also said that the work is incomplete and that those numbers are likely to rise. Everybody in this House would agree that this is reprehensible and that the sooner we can get the full facts out there, the absolute better. 1 in 4 who are experts in this area have described these figures as astonishing. There's a huge number of people affected who were much younger at the time of suffering the initial abuse, who may not have come forward with their story, who today are holding on to what happened to them and have held on to that for many years. Mr Elliott outlined how 14 of the alleged perpetrators had multiple victims, and he discovered that there was one serious perpetrator of which there was no awareness within Scouting Ireland that this person was a perpetrator, and therefore there was no file on him. There have been many enforced changes to Scouting Ireland since the initial inquiry, and we hope that the current government arrangements are robust enough to ensure that any further allegation of abuse is reported under the current legislation, and that those who make those reports are given the support that they need. Families and the children involved want this to allow them to have the security and as much as possible to give their voice a voice in this debate and to allow them to come forward. Minister, given the seriousness of this issue, are you satisfied about the process and how the allegations are being examined? And are you satisfied that known victims have access to full counselling and to any other support that they require? What processes are the government putting in place to allow people to come forward who may not have come forward, and to allow them to do so on a confidential basis? And in your capacity as Minister for Justice, has Minister Zappone contacted you or met you to ensure that there is Garda involvement at every level to assist and support these people? And will the government give consideration to the establishment of a specific helpline to allow people to come forward in confidence and to get the security and help that they need in this situation?
Thank you, Concordia. I'd like to thank Deputy Calleary for raising this most important matter, notwithstanding the fact that the issue was the subject matter of discussion at a joint Oireachtas committee as recently as yesterday. Can I say, like all members of this House, I'm appalled at the allegations that have emerged in relation to historical abuse allegations at Scouting Ireland. As my colleague Minister Zappone has said, Scouting Ireland informed the Office of the Minister late on Tuesday that as part of a review being carried out by Mr Ian Elliott, as has been referred to by Deputy Calleary, he has found evidence to date of 71 alleged abusers and 108 alleged victims in the organisation. Scouting Ireland has advised that most of these cases were between the 1960s and the 1980s. They advised that some of the alleged abusers and victims became known to them separate to the examination of historic files. Several victims have recently come forward, as Deputy Calleary has acknowledged. Minister has further been advised that none of the alleged abusers are still with Scouting Ireland. They have confirmed, however, that reports have been made to Tusla, reports have been made to the Garda Síochána, reports have been made further to other police forces in jurisdictions where many of the alleged abusers may be in residence or living. I want to acknowledge the fact that in recent times Minister Zappone reinstated funding to Scouting Ireland for a period of 6 months up to April next year. Indeed, like Minister Zappone, both myself and all government ministers are extremely concerned at the extremely high number of alleged cases of abuse. In this regard, Minister Zappone is seeking additional information from Scouting Ireland. Funding has only been restored on an interim basis. That, of course, remains under examination. I want to assure Deputy Calleary that every support will be made available in order to ensure that all victims can come forward, do come forward, are assisted in that pursuit, and the appropriate authorities will engage in the necessary investigative work.
Thank you, Minister. I welcome the assurance that none of the alleged abusers are still with Scouting Ireland. That is important. However, are you confident that Scouting Ireland have the capability and resources to manage this situation? I think it's really important that we get the information and get the facts out there as soon as is possible, and that this drip of information has to stop in order to build confidence within Scouting, but also within the agencies around it, in order to give confidence to those who haven't come forward to come forward and tell their story so that they can get justice. I think it's important that we look at the establishment of a helpline. Minister Zappone said that she was seeking to meet the board of Scouting Ireland. Has that meeting been arranged, and when will it be held? And can you confirm that the Tusla are available to get involved in this situation and to give the backup that is necessary in order to ensure that the most important people in this, the victims, will be allowed to tell their story and allowed to access a path to justice, and that there will be no inordinate delays in them seeking that justice?
I would advise that every effort will be made on the part of government and indeed all appropriate state agencies to ensure A, that this issue can be fully investigated, and B, that all victims can come forward in a timely and appropriate manner. I want to acknowledge the new board of Scouting Ireland. I want to acknowledge the review of governance in the matter of Scouting Ireland. In May, as members will recall, Minister Zappone appointed Ms Gillian Van Turnout as an independent expert to examine the governance structures in Scouting Ireland and indeed related issues. She submitted her final report on the 14th of June last. The board confirmed its decision to fully implement all of the recommendations in respect of governance, and it was on this basis that Minister Zappone sanctioned interim funding for a period of 3 months until the end of September. At the end of September, the then board voted to reinstate the Chief Scout as chair. This was done notwithstanding the fact that the Chief Scout is a respondent in an ongoing independent barrister's investigation. This, of course, was unacceptable to government. I want to welcome the appointment of the new board. I want to ensure that every effort is made to bring this matter to a satisfactory conclusion for the victims involved, and that due process will take place in the context of any investigation, including Garda investigations. And can I say, in conclusion, that my department, as the Department of Justice, will assist in any way possible with the other departments and state agencies as appropriate.